Don't be mad. You're thinking, oh, it's time to take the head off this time. Really? Of course not. Something else came up. So here goes. It's something I got to do before I take the head off. Anyway, what it's going to require is a word, actually a lot of words, on something called a tappet guide. So, a little explanation about a tappet guide. The valve stem, which is underneath these cam lobes, the valve stem is held in the center of the valve port by a series of seats and springs and collars. And at the very top end of the valve stem is a little pad. It looks like a little CR123 battery. It's an adjustment or clearance pad for the actual valve clearance. And what holds that little pad in place is something called a tappet. It's like a little hat that sits on top. And what keeps all of that centered in the valve port is the tappet guide. So, and again, the tappet guide, let me just show you this, if you can see this. Underneath the lobe, the cam lobe here, is that hat, that little silver hat that holds down the valve clearance pad. And then around the outside edge of that, you can see a ring. And what that ring is actually the collar at the top of the tappet guide itself. All right. So now, if you're wondering how the hell this came onto my radar, this whole topic of tappet guides, I'm sure it was like pure dumb luck, or probably the angel that sits on my shoulder and whispers in my ear, hey, stupid, don't do that. Sometimes I don't hear so well. But yeah, I was looking up stuff on the internet for tips, more tips on removing the head. And I saw these threads on the Jaguar owners forums about tappet guides falling out and tappet guide failure, and how that they need to be secured with these special plates. And that was just in the context of pulling the head off. Like, whoa. And there were, many stories that people were saying, hey, I discovered that the tappet guides were loose when we were doing some sort of service. One person said that they had tilted the head up on, their workbench, and that's when they heard the tappet guides flip-flopping around. That's the lucky way to find out that the tappet guide has failed. But the failure that happens while the engine is running, super scary. But anyway, so the idea that these things may fall out while I'm taking the head off, it's like, you know what, I'm not going down that road. That I am installing the stake down kit, basically this. You have these 3 metal plates. How they fit, I'll show you. And self-tapping screws. There you go. And I have enough plates to do both the exhaust and intake side, so I'm certainly going to do both. Now, yes, that means drilling holes into this beautiful aluminum head. My God. But yeah, the first hole's going to hurt the worst. Oh man, that didn't come out right. Well, anyway, wish me luck. Well, you can see that the tappet guide stake down kit has been installed. Okay then, so now the next step is to get the sprockets off of the camshaft, because they hold the top timing chain, and each one of these sprockets is held on by 2 bolts. So to get to the bolts, the engine has to be rotated in a certain position. So to get at one bolt, it needs to be at top dead center. To get at the other bolt, it needs to be at bottom dead center. So what I'm going to do, and this is thanks to Adam at Living with a Classic, so thank you, Adam, so much for this tip, is start by putting the engine at bottom dead center so I can get to that bolt on each one of the sprockets. Then rotate the engine over to top dead center, and then I can get to the other bolt that holds the sprockets on. So some clever person, Jaguar Engineering, put a wonderfully pronounced notch at the front of the camshaft that lets you know when the engine is back at top dead center. And just to hold things in place while you're doing this kind of work, they also developed this special cam alignment tool that fits into that notch and holds the camshaft in place. Thank you very much. I'll show you that in action a little bit later. But in order to get the chain loose enough to manipulate the sprockets, I need to use a special tool, another one, and this goes in the front and allows you to loosen the tension on the timing chain. Very specific. And guess what? Made in China, 26 bucks. So pretty cool stuff. Let me grab the camera and show you what this looks like from the front. So you can see the bolts here on the sprockets are safety wired. Going to have to take care of that. And these little brackets are very clever because it allows you to move the sprockets away from the camshafts, and they kind of hold the sprockets in place with the timing chain still on them. So that's pretty cool beans. Now, here is the lock nut that I have to loosen up, and then if you can see in there, there's little holes that accommodate the nubs on this tool. So, and you have to turn the engine, or sorry, turn the tensioner counterclockwise to tighten it and clockwise to loosen it. Go figure. Yeah. All right. And then here is the notch I was referring to. And this tool goes right into that notch. And man, it has to be right on or the tool just doesn't fit. Anyway, like I say, stick around. A couple of issues happen when trying to loosen the timing chain. And that is, first, this little plunger here is supposed to be completely compressed to be able to turn the adjuster. So it looks like it's completely depressed, but it's not. There's actually a little bit further it can go. Now, it won't go all the way in unless the plunger is all the way out first. So it's got to fully disengage and then fully engage. Yeah, and it's like, okay, that's simple, except for this stupid little thing wouldn't pop out. It turns out that if you just turn the engine just a little bit, turn the crank, so that the timing chain moves a bit, then the plunger will come out happily. Then you can turn the adjuster. So this little tool that I was all excited about, what it was supposed to do is have a collar big enough to depress that plunger while you were turning the adjuster. But it required two people to try to work this tool and hold the plunger in. That was a lot of fun. And of course, we were trying to loosen the timing chain, which means turning it clockwise, and it just wouldn't budge. And it became very clear that we were putting way too much force on it. Something wasn't right. And it turns out that the timing chain, incredibly, was in the complete loose, fully loosened setting. So, yeah, thankfully we didn't hurt anything other than just being really annoyed. But to get this plunger completely depressed, again, rock the engine just so that the timing chain moves a little bit, and now this thing will pop back out. Great. And now that it's popped out, to push it all the way in and hold it there while an adjustment's being made. This is what I came up with. Not pretty, but this, garbage. So this was the solution. I told you it wasn't pretty. Have some square aluminum stock and a big ass screwdriver. I know, cringe. And the screwdriver is holding that plunger down into place. So now I can use this tool anyway, and I can look at that. I'm loosening it by turning it clockwise, but that's as loose as it's going to get. And now I can move on to taking the bolts out of the camshaft sprockets and securing the chains to the sprockets themselves, and then move the sprockets in on their little handy dandy holding brackets or storage brackets. But before I do all that, I am going to stuff this cavity with as many red rags as I can, because if I drop something down in there, it's going to be a whole new ball game. All right. So we have the sprockets loosened from the camshafts, and the timing chain is zip tied to the sprockets. Hopefully that stays in place. And then the sprockets come in like that. And now the head can be lifted, and this whole assembly with the sprockets just stays in place. At least that's the plan. We'll find out.